Every knock from my closet was sinister. What I discovered inside haunts me to this day. Michelle staggered into her home, weary from yet another grueling 12-hour shift as a nurse. The sweet scent of honeysuckle wafted through the air of Maplewood, a sharp contrast to the dread that gnawed at her insides. With Lucas tucked away in bed, she finally sank into the warmth of her living room, surrendering to exhaustion. But just as she started to relax, it began a soft, rhythmic knock emanating from Lucas's closet. At first, she thought it was just her mind playing tricks on her. Maybe the floor creaked, or the old house groaned. So, she tried to block it out, only to have the knocks come back, louder, sharper, insistent. Each thud sent a jolt of terror through her veins. Something was trying to get her attention, something lurking in the shadows of her own home. A creeping sense of dread coiled in her stomach. Gathering her courage, she ventured down the dimly lit hallway, every inch of the air thick with tension. The wallpaper seemed to close in on her, the comforting mundane of their cozy suburb fading into something sinister. Rational thoughts, trembling in her mind, offered explanations of forgotten toy or the wind playing tricks. But the knocks only grew louder, sharper, a desperate plea that felt almost alive. Standing in front of the closet door, she hesitated, fear anchoring her feet to the floor. The buzzing of her phone broke the silence. It was a neighborhood alert someone had gone missing, whispers of urban legends haunting the streets of Maplewood. A chill cut through her, freezing the very breath in her lungs. Was her family being watched? Were the friendly faces she exchanged pleasantries with mere masks hiding something far worse? Panic coursed through her. She wanted to scream, but found herself paralyzed by the sheer weight of the unknown. What if they were not just lost neighbors? What if they were predators waiting to pounce? Her heart raced. Each knock thudded against the door, matching the rhythm of her fear. Before we continue, I need to tell you something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to their system, and many people are missing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and select all notifications so you don't miss future videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. The knocking stopped abruptly, plunging her into a chilling silence that felt like a vacuum sucking all warmth and reassurance out of the room. In that uncanny stillness, she heard it a whisper, soft and haunting, calling her late grandmother's name. The legacy of a family myth twisted through generations suddenly loomed over her head. It gripped her heart and squeezed. What lie cloaked in darkness waited for her behind that closet door? As the shadows seemed to deepen, creeping forth as if they had a life of their own, Michelle stood frozen, teetering between flight and confrontation. The final knock reverberated ominously, echoing a haunting promise she couldn't quite comprehend, leaving her at the precipice of terror, breath caught in her throat, consumed by the unknown. What would she choose to face? A shiver shot down Michelle's spine as shadows writhed around her, the weight of the atmosphere suffocating. The air thickened, twisting her thoughts into tight knots of dread. That whisper, carrying her grandmother's name, echoed ominously in her mind, a siren's call to the past laced with memories she thought she had buried. What did it mean? The closet door loomed larger, menacing in its stillness. It creaked, as if breathing, responding to her fear. With shaking hands, she reached for the handle, feeling its cool, metallic weight. It could have been an illusion, a mirage conjured by her exhausted mind. But the room felt alive, pulsating with anxiety and a raw, almost primal energy. She swung the door open, heart thundering. The darkness yawned back, a cavernous void swallowing the waning light. Inside, nothing, just the musty scent of forgotten clothes and dust-covered toys that belonged to a time long gone. But then she spotted a flicker of movement at the back, the edges of something small and dark, shifting as if animated by unseen fingers. "Lucas?" she called softly, holding her breath, panic threatening to swallow her whole. Had he snuck out of bed? Her voice trembled. The closet felt as though it could swallow her whole if she weren't careful. There was no answer, just silence that scratched at her resolve. With a deep breath, she stepped into the closet. The air stung her lungs, cold and clammy like a grave. As she shuffled further into this dimensional place, Recalling every horror movie she had ever seen, she caught sight of what moved an old, worn teddy bear, half hidden beneath a heap of moth-eaten clothes. It twitched as though waiting, expecting something. The hair on her arms stood straight, as if being watched. She reached to grab the teddy bear, its glassy eyes gleaming in the darkness. It wasn't just any bear. It was Lucas's, the one that had been lost months ago. The same bear that had somehow found its way back, nudging at the edges of her sanity. But a new sound emerged, drowning out the ominous silence. It grew louder, a soft pattering like tiny feet. Heart racing, she spun around only to see the closet door had swung shut, trapping her in shadow. Panic clawed at her throat. "Lucas!" She called again, her voice rising in pitch, but only the dark echoed back. She pressed her palms against the door, desperation mounting as the pattering intensified. It was inside the closet with her. She could feel its presence, an entity lingering beyond her sight. Michelle spun on her heel, the teddy bear dropping from her grasp, smacking the floor. She backed away, only to trip over it and tumble to the ground. The closet was no longer just a frame. It felt like a threshold to a world of nightmares. Crawling on all fours, she clawed at the door. It would not budge. The knocking returned this time, furious, a thunderous banging that rattled her very bones, a frenzied insistence that echoed the terror now spiraling within her. "I have to get out," she whispered to herself, heart racing. The sounds swirled around her, closing in like a tightening noose, while shadows danced mockingly against the walls. And then she heard a low, raspy breath behind her, followed by a giggle that sent chills cascading straight down her spine. Michelle froze as a figure slowly emerged from the depths of the darkness, a small shape silhouetted by flickering light creeping through the cracks of the door unknown. It wasn't Lucas. The chilling figure grinned wide with hollow eyes that glinted with malice. Each giggle twisted like a knife. What would she do next? With the door still locked, her escape line burning thin, she braced herself to confront whatever sinister truth was waiting to be revealed. What would the figure say? And how deep was the darkness behind her closet door? Michelle's heart slammed against her chest, the thud muffling the giggles echoing in the tiny space. She couldn't look away from the figure, a small, shadowy silhouette crawling toward her, each movement eerily slow. The creature's eyes glistened like twin windows into a void, drawing her in even as every instinct screamed at her to flee. The air thickened, heavy with dread and the scent of something foul. Who are you?" Her voice quivered, the words catching in her throat like shards of glass. No response came. Instead, the figure crept closer, its skeletal features eerily reminiscent of a child, a twisted mockery of innocence wrapped in an unsettling grin. Michelle scrambled backward, desperately clawing toward the closet door that remained stubbornly shut. The soft pattering grew louder, a cacophony of tiny feet rushing around her, drowning her senses in panic. She felt as if the walls themselves were closing in, pressing against her like an invisible force ready to swallow her whole. "Leave me alone," she shouted, her fear giving way to a surge of anger. The giggles faded for just a moment, replaced by an unnerving stillness. But then, without warning, the figure lunged forward. It was fast, too fast. The dim light looming behind it hinted at elongated limbs, unnatural and grotesque. With a final desperate shove, Michelle threw herself against the door. The closet shifted, just a little, and she felt hope blooming. Yet, it was quickly crushed as the figure hissed, a sound like air escaping a balloon, unfurling chaos in her mind. "Stay with me," the creature whispered, its voice a sickly sweet tone that dripped with something sinister. "I can't play alone." The words slithered into her ears, wrapping around her mind. Michelle squeezed her eyes shut, forcing back tears. Memories of Lucas flooded her thoughts, the warmth of his tiny hand in hers, his laughter echoing through the house. She pressed her back against the door, trying to ground herself, but the closet felt alive, quaking under the weight of profound darkness. "No, you're not real," she yelled, grabbing blindly for something to defend herself. Her fingers brushed against the teddy bear she had dropped, and she seized it, clutching it to her chest like a lifeline. The laughter erupted again, higher pitched and frenetic, surrounding her like a tempest. "I want to play. It's no fun alone." The figure paused, tilting its head as if considering her. It lunged again, knocking into her, and Michelle stumbled, falling backward onto the floor as the bear slipped from her grasp. Suddenly, she lunged for the closet door. Using all her strength, she banged on it, yelling for help that felt as distant as a fading dream. The laughter transformed into a chilling scream, vibrating the very walls around her. Then, everything went quiet. The closet stopped moving, the giggles dying in her ears like smoke dissipating in the wind. Michelle blinked, her body frozen with fear and confusion. She dared to look, to confront the shadow that had invaded her life. The figure was gone. Breathing shakily, she reached for the handle again and turned, ready to flee from the nightmare. But before she could open it, a whisper slithered through the closing space, a name lingering on the air, darker than the shadows swirling beyond. Michelle, I'm still here, the word pierced through her. She stepped back, pulse racing, her mind reeling. Had it been a trick of her mind? Or was it something else entirely? A cold dread filled her as the darkness seemed to thicken, wrapping around her. She gasped for breath, every instinct screaming that the horror wasn't over. Because what had come from the closet was only a taste of what was to come, and it wanted more. As she clutched her heart, realizing the game was far from finished, she heard a new sound, soft, deliberate knocks coming from beneath the floorboards, a haunting echo that promised her worst fears were only just beginning to unfold. What would rise next from the unseen depths? The knocking intensified, adorned with a sinister rhythm that pulsed beneath Michelle's feet. It felt like a heartbeat, steady, deliberate, almost mocking. Each thud resonated through her bones, urging her to act, to flee. But where would she go? The house felt like a labyrinth, every shadow whispering secrets she feared to uncover. She turned back to the closet, instinctively eyeing the door. Its presence loomed like a portal to another world, one she didn't want to explore. Seconds stretched out painfully, as every flicker of movement in the corner of her eye sent her heart racing. Suddenly, the drawer from her old dresser slid open on its own, revealing a glint of something sharp. This was too much. The energy tingled in the air, peppered with a chilling atmosphere that clawed at her sanity. Michelle grasped the edge of the bed, a small anchor against the surging tide of fear. Lucas, she whispered, but the name felt inadequate, like a plea that could not bridge the chasm that had separated them. And there it was again, a knock from the floor, louder, like a beckoning. The grip tightened in her chest. Whatever lay beneath the floorboards wanted her attention. Michelle edged toward the door, her feet dragging as if in thick syrup. She leaned down, pressing her ear to the wooden floor. Beneath her, the knocking changed, turning into frantic tapping, as if something was trying to claw its way up. A primal instinct screamed at her to run, yet that inexplicable curiosity held her hostage, spellbound by the darkness. No, no, she breathed, retreating from the sound, feeling the familiar dread crawling back up her spine. But just as she turned, ready to flee, a voice slid through the darkness, curling around her thoughts. Michelle, please let me out. It was a voice she recognized, but twisted. Lucas? Was it truly him? The sincerity that once danced in his tone was replaced by an unsettling longing. The warmth of their shared memories faded into cold fog as the realization struck. Whatever was beneath the floor was not her son. But could she dismiss it? The knocking grew anxious, rising to a frenzy. Something was furious, desperate. The floor creaked ominously, wood splintering under the strain. That sound, it was not just a child's voice. It morphed, bent into something lower, a guttural croon that sent shivers racing down her arms. With her heart pounding and every muscle screaming for flight, she shot back toward the closet. She wrenched the door open, hoping it would lead her to salvation, or at least to escape. But the fear turned sharper, driving her back as if the shadows themselves dared her to enter. What do you want? She yelled into the closet, her voice breaking as despair flooded her senses. A murmur wafted towards her, heavy with malice. To play, Michelle, the familiar echo of laughter filled the air, this time harsher, twisted. A terrifying mix of childhood joy and horror. The closet seemed to pulse, the air within vibrating with dark energy. She could feel it, a living thing, ready to devour her spirit. Without thinking, she snatched the teddy bear from the floor. It felt absurd. This old toy could hardly shield her from what lay ahead. But the lifeless gaze of the stuffed animal felt familiar, a tether to the innocence she desperately fought to cling to. Just then, the knocking erupted again, splintering the floorboards open with a deafening bang. Michael stumbled backward, fear anchoring her still. And then, silence. Michelle closed her eyes, willing it to be over, to wake up from this nightmare. But instantaneously, the door behind her slammed shut. She whirled, wide-eyed. Something warm and sticky dripped down the frame, pooling at her feet. Each breath felt heavier than the last. The knowledge crashed down. She had awoken something far worse than she had ever imagined. And whatever it was not finished with her yet. Just as she felt the room shudder, the walls vibrating with sudden energy, the ghostly echoes of a child's laughter filled the void. The darkness lurked, poised to strike. And her heart raced, wondering what would rise next. The air thickened, becoming suffocating. Michelle's heart thudded wildly, drowning out the chilling laughter that echoed around her. She gripped the teddy bear tightly, its worn fabric now feeling like a desperate lifeline. The warmth from the toy contrasted sharply with the icy dread that had taken over the room. The walls pressed in, swirling with ominous energy. She could almost hear them breathe, as if they were alive, hungry. The once familiar home had morphed into a prison, each shadow stretching, stirring around her like phantoms eager to pounce. "Stop it!" Michelle screamed into the abyss, her voice strained and shaky. She didn't know if she was demanding silence or begging for understanding from whatever had stirred beneath the floorboards. The laughter morphed into something deeper, more sinister. It twisted around her like creeping vines, tugging at her sanity. As if in response to her outcry, a series of knocks came again, louder this time accompanied by a voice, a low growl that boomed from the darkness. "Let us out." Michelle stumbled backward, pulse racing. The floor felt alive beneath her feet, the knocking now rhythmic, like a warped heartbeat. She was a moth trapped in a web, teetering on the edge between curiosity and terror. "Lucas?" she whispered, her throat dry. Expectations twisted into knots in her chest. "Is that you?" But a deeper, darker understanding settled in her mind. Lucas couldn't be there. Not with the dread that had rooted itself in this place. In a wild panic, she whirled back to the closet. The door loomed large, dark and foreboding like a monstrous mouth ready to swallow her whole. "Please, Michelle, just open me," truth clawed at her. This voice twisted as it was felt too familiar. Michelle raised a trembling hand, heart hammering in her chest, hovering over the doorknob. What if this was a mistake? What if by opening it, she unleashed something that would lay waste to the last remnants of her sanity? With an unsteady breath, she forced herself to turn away. Retreat. Find a way out. That was the only thought that mattered now. Yet, as she gingerly stepped back, the rug underneath her feet shifted. The floorboards groaned ominously, splintering open with a sharp crack. Panic surged through her, and she turned to flee. But then the laughter erupted again. This time more menacing, no longer the sound of a child, but a cacophony filled with lust for violence, a storm of chilling glee echoing through the house. "Join us." Michelle, she stumbled into the wall, hands sliding over the cool surface as she pushed against it, her breath quickening. The shadows twisted, elongating and reshaping, as if debating whether to chase her or stay hidden in the dark. Not wanting to disturb them, she pressed against the wall, trying to quiet her breaths. Something shifted in her peripheral, shadows flickered, as if something was drawing closer, creeping towards the light. With a surge of adrenaline, she snatched the teddy bear up high as if it could defend her. "Get away," she cried, a mixture of fury and fear erupting from her throat. The shadows merely buzzed with a mocking energy. They slithered forward, weaving through the corners, creeping into her mind, wrapping her in despair. An icy chill wrapped around her, forcing her thoughts to splinter. And just like that, the closet door creaked open slowly, a gateway to whatever nightmare waited within. Anxiety surged as she fought the very real urge to scream. What lay within those dark depths? Michelle's hand dropped to her side, the teddy bear slipping from her grasp. Would she dare? As her heart surged, every instinct screaming to run, the figure of a small child shadowed at the back of the closet grinned at her, eyes glinting with terrible secrets. "Come and play, Mommy." She felt her breath hitch, the darkness closing in tighter, a vice around her chest. And the question hung in the air. Was escape even possible now? The smile of the shadowed child widened, stretching impossibly across their face. Michelle's breaths came in rapid bursts, each gasp more frantic than the last. The closet smelled stale, like dust, and something darker, something that made her stomach flip. She clutched at the wall, nails digging into the painted surface for any semblance of grounding. "Who are you?" she croaked out, each syllable like fire on her tongue. The child's eyes sparkled with a cruel delight, twisting both terror and curiosity within Michelle. "Why don't you come find out?" The voice was sweet, yet edged with malice, like honey laced with poison. Michelle's heart thudded harder, the rhythm nearly drowning out the looming threat that surrounded her. She was drawn in, a moth flying toward the flame, knowing the danger, yet feeling mysteriously compelled. "Stay back," Michelle shouted, defiance flickering momentarily through her fear. The shadows inside the closet shifted and thrummed, almost as if they were alive, eager for her to step closer. This was it. She was standing on the precipice of some unthinkable horror. Yet, the child's eyes continued to beckon her into that suffocating darkness. "We're lonely, we need you." Mommy, something cracked within her. The teddy bear lay forgotten on the floor, a casualty of her dread. Michelle stepped back, recoiling from the depths of that closet like it might explode. The laughter faded only to be replaced with desperate whispers. "Join us." Walls vibrated with sinister intent. Each whisper slithered into her mind, tying her thoughts into knots. Michelle's back hit the wall. Fleeing seemed both urgent and futile. The house was shifting, pulsating around her, waiting, threatening. She could hear the sound of her heartbeat in her ears, feel the ground trembling as if it were in sync with the malevolence that brewed in the darkness. Suddenly, from the closet came a slamming sound, echoing like a gunshot, then silence. A heavy dread settled over her. What awaited behind the door? With each fold of the shadows, visions danced in her imagination, memories of Lucas, of laughter, of love, twisted and grotesque. The house around her vibrated with the remnants of those moments, mocking her. Mommy, her resolve cracked, and an unsettling mix of guilt and fear crashed over her. What if it was Lucas? What if he was lost, trapped inside? A sliver of hope pierced through her terror, only for the shadows to seize it, twisting it into despair. In an impulse, she stepped forward, drawn like a puppet to the strings of that sinister voice. But something in her clawed back. With a deep breath, she turned on her heel, a wild surge of adrenaline pushing her toward the door. She had to escape. She raced for the staircase, limbs moving as if they were not her own, but the laughter flared up behind her, mocking, booming. "You can't leave. You're ours now." Michelle stumbled, hitting the bottom step hard. Pain shot through her ankle, but she didn't dare stop. She had to reach the door. Freedom felt so close, yet a dark force pressed against her, suffocating her escape. But as she burst into the living room, the world outside seemed unreal. Rays of sunlight fought valiantly against the creeping shadows that pooled along the edges of her vision. "Leave now, Michelle. You have to decide." The cold voice came from nowhere and everywhere at once, dense with ominous power. She hesitated, the sense of impending doom crashing in. The shadows flickered in the corners like snarling beasts waiting for a meal, and she felt their hunger, sharp and insatiable. "Lucas?" she whispered, straining to hear any sign of him in the chaos. Suddenly, a shriek cut through the air, scaring birds off from the trees outside. The sound split her mind like a crack of thunder. It came from the closet. "Help me." The cry sent icy tendrils racing down her spine. Could she abandon him? With one last breath, she teetered at the threshold, torn between horror and hope. And then the shadows enveloped the doorway, sealing her fate within. "Choose," they whispered. As the darkness surged toward her, clinging to her flesh, she blurted out, "I choose you." And the silence swallowed her whole. The darkness squeezed in on Michelle, a cold shroud that snuffed out the warmth of the world outside. She felt herself being pulled deeper, drowning in the shadows. The shadows whispered louder, weaving through her thoughts, almost as if they pressed against her brain. "You choose us." The air felt heavy, suffocating. She could scarcely breathe, her chest tightening as silent screams piled up in her throat. Suddenly, a flicker in the dark. A memory. Lucas laughing, his chubby hands grasping at something bright, innocent. The sight was a stark contrast to the darkness that now clung to her like a second skin. "Mommy!" The voice echoed again, more desperate now, the pitch pulling at something deep within her. Tears sprang to her eyes as she reached out, instinctively grasping for the warmth of her lost child. "I'm coming, baby." But the shadows glimmered, fatter and hungrier. They twisted, coiling around her like serpents, their presence both familiar and foreign. Michelle felt her sanity teetering. "Let me go?" she shouted, a burst of defiance forcing the words out through gritted teeth. There was laughter again, high-pitched, echoing around her. "You don't understand. You're part of us now. Let the darkness in." With every shout, she felt the darkness pull tighter, warping the air around her. Reality began to shift, and she found herself standing on the threshold of the closet again, but it looked different. Strange. The edges blurred like the scene in a dream that was never quite right. "Leave." A new voice broke through, raspy and cracked, like glass grinding against glass. "Get out while you still can." Turning her head wildly, she searched for the owner of the voice, but found only shadows reaching for her soul. The dread pooled in her stomach, a murky wave of despair. It was as if that voice was warning her of something beyond the veil. "Mommy!" Lucas's plea punctured through the chaos again, so close yet so far. "Please help me." The urge to respond collided with her instinct to flee. Michelle stood trembling, mind spinning wildly. What was waiting for her on the other side? Could it be Lucas? Or would it be something worse? She took another step forward, the shadows scraping against her, each touch chilling her bones. "I need to know," the words spilled from her lips before she could stop them. She needed to find out. She couldn't turn back now. The room shifted again. She blinked, and the world morphed before her eyes. Suddenly, the closet door swung wide, revealing an abyss of swirling darkness. A laughter surged behind her, louder, filling every crevice of her mind, drowning out her thoughts. "Come on, don't leave us. You're just like us." Heart racing, she felt the floor under her shift. Was she stepping on something? A vision formed at the edges of her awareness. A room, once bright and warm, now lay in ruins, scattered toys lying beneath dust. But where was Lucas? The stark contrast of the memories became unbearable. She gritted her teeth as panic clawed at her throat. And then, without warning, the light flickered. Time stretched thin as if everything slowed. In that brief moment, she saw it, a grim reflection of herself trapped within the layers of the shadows. "Leave, Michelle." The raspy voice hissed again, now booming with urgency. "You have to leave now." But her gaze turned to the darkness at the closet's center, the swirling shadow forming into something tangible, something real. "Who is there?" she cried, fear transforming into desperation. Silence answered her. Then the whispers returned. "Choose, Michelle, but no. Every choice has a price." The cold wrapped its vice-like grip tighter around her, and the shadow began to pulsate, the air thick with a choking anticipation. What lay behind that darkness? She couldn't turn away now. Her heart hammered against her ribcage, each beat urging her toward the secret hidden in the dark. Then it came, a pulsing figure emerging from the shadows, features blurring and swirling like smoke. Michelle gasped, caught somewhere between recognition and horror. As she peered closer, she finally understood what her choice truly meant, and the truth sent a chill through her. It was living. It was waiting for her. The pulsating figure stepped closer, an embodiment of the void that had taunted her. A twisted smile stretched across its dark face, eyes gleaming with malice. Michelle stumbled back, heart racing, her breath becoming erratic. It was impossible to look away, a sick mix of horror and familiarity tightening around her throat. "Join us, become one with the shadows," it crooned, voice dripping with a syrupy sweetness that only made the invitation feel more sinister. The figure stretched a hand toward her, fingers elongating like tendrils, creeping closer into the dim light filtering from the closet. "Mommy, please." Lucas's voice echoed again, a fragile plea that split through the thick atmosphere. "I'm here." The sound felt like a distant thunder, urging her to break free from the dark entity holding her captive. "Shut up." The entity snarled, its perfect smile twisting into a snarl of rage, teeth sharp like shards of glass. "You have no idea what you're asking for." Michelle felt the shadows flicker, unsure whether to dart towards the light of the hallway or to strain closer to the dark figure that promised an answer, perhaps even a reunion with her lost child. With a single breath, arms trembling, she stepped forward. Let him go? The shadows around her hissed, turning sharp and jagged, and the figure let out a guttural laugh that vibrated through her bones. It lunged, grasping for her, but she pushed through the chaos, fueled by a mixture of terror and maternal instinct. The darkness clawed at her flesh, wrapping around her, threatening to consume her. She could almost feel it pulling her into its depths, a force that gnawed at her sanity. You can't fight what you truly are. The figure shrieked, its voice slicing through her resolve. Adrenaline surged as Michelle felt the weight of the shadows grow heavier, pressing against her chest like lead. In a desperate act, she wrenched herself away, stumbling backward into the remnants of the room. Toys lay scattered, some cracked and broken, others untouched, whispering the stories of happier days. "Lucas!" she screamed, her heart embodying every breath. "Where are you?" The laughter abruptly stopped, replaced by a hush that swallowed every sound, every hope. A flicker in the corner of her eye drew her attention toward the closet's far corner, where the shadows seemed to swirl more aggressively. It was as if something trembled just beyond their reach. She wiped the tears from her eyes, every instinct telling her to retreat, but maternal love clawed at her insides, forcing her onward. "I will not leave you," she cried, anger igniting within her. The shadows recoiled, almost as if hurt. Then came the murmur, soft and pleading. "Mommy, I'm scared, keep talking to me," Michelle shouted, grounding herself in the sound of her child's voice. "Don't stop." The shadows shifted, flickering like a flame about to extinguish. "You dare defy us?" The familiar entity shrilled, its voice a mix of contempt and fear. "You're mine." "No." Michelle spat back, gathering her courage. "I choose my son." The echoes grew louder, the cloak of darkness swirling dangerously around her. Voices mixed in a chaotic chorus, each whisper pulling at her sanity. Feeling strength course through her veins, she lunged, reaching for the beckoning light teasing her at the closet's edge. The shadows twisted violently, angry and hungry as she pulled free. The laughter became shrill, cacophonous, as if the very air detonated around her. With one final push, she broke through, tumbling into a brilliant spectrum of light and sound. The laughter stopped. Breathless, she lay gasping on the floor, the last vestiges of shadow dissipating. But the darkness that had held her captive felt different now. It lingered, simmering at the edges of her vision. You can escape, but you can never truly leave. The raspy voice imbued with a chilling finality echoed in her mind. Heart pounding, she quickly turned to the closet. The door creaked, threatening to close, but the urge to look back, to see if Lucas was really gone, surged anew. In the depths of that closet, something shifted again, an echo of a presence left behind, a faint shimmer of hope mingling with terror. And there it was, a single toy on the floor, a gleaming reminder of untold secrets. Michelle reached as a chill washed over her. She didn't know if she had truly escaped. What other horrors awaited her in the darkness? Would Lucas guide her to safety or deeper into the shadows? She barely comprehended. The air grew heavy once more, and she knew the real terror had only just begun. Michelle's heart raced, each beat echoing the urgency of her thoughts. The remnants of shadow seemed to coil around the toy, a small plush bear, its soft fabric stained and tattered. Suddenly, the room felt too quiet, as if the air had been sucked out. She hesitated, torn between nostalgia and the pervasive dread settling over her like a thick fog. "Lucas," she murmured, half hoping this toy would provide a clue, a connection back to her son. She picked it up, the plushness reminding her of bedtime stories and gentle whispers. But as she squeezed it, the bear emitted a low whimper, almost lifelike. Panic gripped her. The figure in the shadows had promised her son. Was Lucas somehow trapped here too? The bear shivered in her hands, and her mind filled with fragmented memories, chaotic screams melding with laughter, dark figures darting in the corners. She dropped the toy, its face twisted in a grin that felt wrong, sickeningly wrong. The shadows stirred as if aware of her every move, growing bolder in their presence, a twisted dance of menace. "Lucas!" she yelled, voice breaking, each syllable tearing through the silence. desperate for a reply. "Please, I need you." But the air remained still, suffocating. She felt the walls pulse around her, the faintest caress of cold fingers grazing her arms. "They're coming." A terror-laden whisper brushed her ear, sending shivers down her spine. She spun around, but there was nothing, only the closet, dark and foreboding. "I want to let you take him," she screamed. Her resolve surged like lava, pushing against the icy grip of despair. Yet, shadows flickered again, coalescing into shapes nearly human, twisted forms that reflected her worst fears, the sensation of failure. The laughter resumed, low and guttural, echoing in her mind. A reminder of the entity's snarl. "You're weak. You will fall." "Shut up," she shouted back, the anger fueling her. "You don't have him." But as soon as she spoke, a voice shot through the cacophony, familiar and hauntingly clear. "Mommy, don't go." "Lucas." She bolted toward the closet, heart pounding furiously. The dark entity writhed, its voice slashing through the air. "You'll have to do better than that." With trembling hands, she pulled on the door, its creak echoing ominously. Inside, the shadows were thicker, swirling with anticipation, alive with potential danger. She squeezed through the gap, feeling cold breath whisper past her skin. "Lucas!" she cried, desperation clawing at her throat. Then she saw the glint of light reflecting off something metallic in the corner of the closet. A small, broken mirror lay shattered, fragments reflecting twisted versions of herself. "Look closer." A chorus of whispers echoed around her, urging her. Taking a deep breath, she stepped toward the shards. The shadows shrank back, as if wary of what she might uncover. "What are you hiding?" she demanded, bending down to examine the shards. They seemed to dance, playing tricks on her vision. But one piece revealed a flicker of movement, a small figure shifting in the reflection, trapped yet full of life. "Mommy!" The voice, desperate and young, nearly cracked her heart. "Lucas?" Her breath caught. The presence of her child resonated in that fractured surface, pulsing with echoing cries that beckoned her closer. Michelle reached toward the shard, drawn inexorably towards the reflection, knowing the shadows around her were tightening their grip. "No!" They screeched in unison, a sound filled with rage. She hesitated, aware that whatever lay beyond that mirror was perilous yet promising. Would she be stepping into a trap, or could this be the chance to reconnect with her son, to pull him from whatever horror held him captive? "Do you really want to know?" A voice purred from the darkness, mischievous and sinister. The air thickened with anticipation, and she could feel the pull of the unknown. With a final glance back at her disheveled room, at the remnants of her past shattered on the floor, she made her choice. As her fingertips brushed the rough edges of the mirror, darkness surged, embracing her, pulling her toward the echoes of her child. And in that moment, she understood that the real horror was yet to unfold. What if the next reflection showed not just her son, but unveiled the terrifying truth about the entity that had hunted them both? Michelle's heart hammered in her chest as she pressed her trembling fingers against the mirror's jagged edge. The darkness clutched at her, a sinister force trying to pull her under, but a fierce resolve ignited within her. "I will save you, Lucas," she cried, her voice a defiant battle cry against the shadows that roamed hungrily around her. The mirror flickered momentarily, revealing splinters of light shining defiantly through the cracks. In those fleeting glimpses, she saw Lucas, her sweet, innocent boy, lost but not gone. The sight of him anchored her, igniting a fire that drove her to push through the suffocating dread. "I'm coming," she shouted, fully ready to shatter the separation between them. With that, she thrust her hand through the mirror, feeling the chill bite against her skin. It pulsed with an energy that tingled, almost electric. Time seemed to stretch as the whisper of her son's name echoed around her, reverberating like a heartbeat. "Mommy." The shadows writhed, twisting into serpentine forms, shrieking in rage. "Leave her," they screamed, a cacophony of voices merging into a snarl. But her determination eclipsed their threats. She felt the warmth of Lucas pulling her deeper. She envisioned his laughter, each joyful note wrapping around her like sunlight banishing the darkness. "Lucas," she called again, bursting through the remnants of the mirror, losing herself in the void of the unknown. An explosive light flooded the space as she crossed into it, illuminating the endless darkness surrounding her. Suddenly, she found herself in a small, dim space with the closet door at her back. The air felt fresher here, almost alive compared to the stifling confinement of her home. But where was Lucas? Mommy? The voice sounded closer now, fragile yet hopeful. Desperately, she followed the sound, maneuvering through the twisted shadows that flickered and shrank in her wake. With every step, the voices of the darkness grew fainter, retreating as if aware they were losing their hold. She stumbled into a clearing, a surreal landscape filled with ethereal whispers. Beneath her feet, the ground shimmered, like milky glass reflecting fractured memories, moments of joy frozen in time. She looked around, searching for that familiar face, and there he was. Peeking from behind a cluster of swirling shadows was Lucas, his small form illuminated by a gentle glow. He looked frightened but untouched, his big eyes wide with tears, yet gleaming with recognition. "Mommy, you found me." "Lucas," she exclaimed, running toward him, her heart bursting with relief. She was almost there. The moment she reached him, she scooped him into her arms, holding him so tightly it hurt. The warmth of his presence filled the void within her. "I thought I lost you," she cried, tears streaming down her cheeks. But the shadows were relentless. The air around them darkened, swirling menacingly. "You shouldn't have come here," they hissed. "He belongs to us." An echoing laugh sent despair flooding back into her heart. "No," Michelle shouted, stepping protectively in front of Lucas. She felt his small hand grip hers tightly, his innocent dependence fueling her strength. He belong to you." The shadows shrank back slightly, stunned by her defiance. Clenching her jaw, she focused on the warmth of Lucas. "We're leaving," she declared, turning toward the distant light that pulsed warmly, promising escape. With a fierce will, she led Lucas towards the glow. The shadows roared, rage flooding their whispers, but as they came closer, they became flimsy, dissolving into wisps of darkness. She could almost hear their desperate cries, lost to the light. "Stay close," Michelle urged, her heart racing with urgency, every step echoing with purpose. The light beckoned them, brighter and more inviting than anything she had ever seen. All she could think about was getting Lucas into safety, away from the darkness that wanted nothing more than to keep him forever. "Mommy?" Lucas whispered, looking up at her with wide eyes, uncertainty flickering within. "Keep your eyes on me," she assured him. "I won't let anything happen to you." As they stepped into the light, a brilliant wave of warmth engulfed them, washing away the oppressive atmosphere of shadows. The light expanded into a radiant sphere around them, pushing back the darkness like a tidal wave. Suddenly, silence enveloped them. The shouts of the entity faded, swallowed by the brilliance that cradled them. Michelle opened her eyes, blinking against the brightness, and stared in disbelief. They were back in the living room, safe and sound, the cozy familiarity surrounding them once again. "Lucas?" she asked softly, her throat tight with emotion. "I'm here, Mommy," he said, throwing his arms around her waist, a beaming smile illuminating his cherubic face. The joy and relief surged through Michelle like a tsunami, the darkness that threatened to pull her under dissipating into obscurity. She held him tightly, feeling every heartbeat, every breath connecting them once more. In that moment, she understood that fear would never truly fade, but love would always be their guiding light. Together, they stepped away from the closet, sealing the door tightly, a wall against the horrors that lurked within. "We survived," she whispered, looking down as Lucas's tiny fingers entwined with hers. "Yes, Mommy." Together, he smiled, blissfully unaware of how close he had come to losing everything, or how determined she would always be to protect that which mattered most. And as they moved forward, the sunlight poured through the windows, illuminating their path, and she couldn't shake the feeling that the battle was won. But the war against the shadows was far from over. You need to subscribe now to our channel for more heart-racing stories just like this one. Smash that like button now to help feed our algorithm. Flood the comments section with your reactions and theories about this wild ending. Don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. There's always more lurking in the shadows.